Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV. If you are ordering from AliExpress or Temu or any of these other online import sites, you're about to get hit with some significant tariff charges. Up until now, you've been able to get around them due to a carve-out in the law, but that is about to end. And the other day we did this video on the Summer Cart 64. It's a flash cartridge for the old Nintendo 64. And I saw a lot of you were shocked with the amount of tariff charges that come on top of the price of the product. So in this instance, this device costs $40.84, but you're going to be paying an additional $41.39. That includes sales tax, but also $38 plus in tariffs due to the changes in how these tariffs will be assessed for small packages. You'll definitely want to watch this one, and we're going to dive into it right now. Now, I do want to let you know before we get started that this video is being brought to you by all of you. That includes everyone who subscribes to this channel and watches on a regular basis, along with those of you who support the channel through my donor box page at Lon.TV/support, through the YouTube membership program, through Floatplane, through Patreon, through the super thanks down below. And of course, we also have the merch store now where you can pick up some cool items like this mug. And I think hopefully we've got enough in the warehouse that there shouldn't be a tariff charge on top of that. But again, I want to thank everyone for their support of the channel. So we're going to spend a bulk of our time today talking about the expiration of what's called the de minimis exemption. This applies to orders that you make through AliExpress or Temu or through Amazon's new Haul app, where you get a product delivered to you directly from overseas. And if that product costs less than $800, you pay no tariff on it, even if the product does usually have a tariff applied to it. So even before these tariffs took effect, there were other tariffs that certain types of products had. But if it's under $800, the de minimis exemption allowed those products to flow through without you having to pay any duty or a tax to the United States government. But that is all going away here because in the most recent orders from the Trump administration on tariffs, that de minimis loophole is now eliminated, which means consumers will be paying for those tariffs when these products come in, irrespective of their value. So here's a great example. I ordered this TV box the other day. This is the Ugos AM6B Plus. This is coming from China. I got it on AliExpress for $168, it looks like. And this is due to arrive hopefully before May 2nd. It's on the way, and I'm hoping it clears customs today so I don't get hit with these tariffs when things take effect later in the week. But if I don't get that product in quick enough, look at the estimated charges here, $254.73, and $244 of that is going to these new tariffs because of this de minimis exemption going away. So let's take a look and see how they break these charges down. Now, the charges will be different based on how you receive the product. If it comes through the postal system, it's a different charge than it is if it comes through FedEx or DHL. So let's take a look at what these new rules will require on postal delivery. So in this case, I actually bought this TV box for $10 less than what it's currently selling for. I paid $158 about a week ago. And what I'm going to pay after May 2nd is 120% of the value of the product, or a $100 flat fee, whichever is largest. Now, typically, the flat fee is often the cap. Here, it's the start. So from what I've researched here, it looks as though no matter what you bring in, if it comes in via the postal service, you pay a $100 flat fee no matter what it is. But if the value of the product is such that the duty will be more than $100 and you pay the higher number. So in this case, my $158 TV box will rack up $189.60 in tariffs. Now, after June 1st, that number goes up. So the flat fee will go up to $200 after June 1st, although the tariff number will stay the same. Again, that is for postal delivery. Now, if we bring it in via DHL or FedEx, that same item is subject to a 20% tariff. The IEEPA is the emergency tariff order. That's the baseline of 20%. Before that, this item did not have a tariff assigned to it. And then there is the reciprocal tariff of 125%, which came after the Chinese raised their tariffs on American imports. So this is actually worse than the postal one, where I'll pay $229.10 for the import of this product. But Apple and some of these big companies with the lobbyists went in and were able to convince the Trump administration to not apply this across the board. So if you are bringing in a computer or a smartphone or some chips in certain sectors of the consumer electronics industry, you're not subject to the reciprocal tariff, but still the other tariff. So for example, if we look at this computer on AliExpress, this is an Intel N100 mini PC. It is selling for $139. Right now, it doesn't include any import taxes. I think this is actually incorrect on AliExpress's part, although they could have worked that into the price of the product. But let's go back and look at how this will work with computers that you bring in due to this new change. So the purchase price in this is $139. The duty on the postal delivery doesn't change for this. It's still $167. But if you bring it in via courier, whether it's DHL or FedEx, you will pay your $139 entry price, and you will have two charges here, a Section 301 charge for $10.44, and then that emergency tariff that was implemented earlier at $27.82, but you're only paying $38.26 because this product is exempt from the reciprocal tariff that a non-computer is subject to. Now, I do want to point out here that the de minimis exemption elimination only applies to shipments from China and Hong Kong. So if, for example, you bought a mini PC that was made in Vietnam and it was under $800, you would not pay any tariff at all, provided though it was actually made there. And there are some provisions that Customs looks at to figure out exactly how much manufacturing actually happened in the country of origin. So it's possible you could get something that was made in Vietnam, but if Customs determines that that wasn't sufficiently manufactured there, you could probably still get hit with a tariff on the import side. Of note, Apple actually is making many of their Mac Minis in Vietnam. The one I reviewed a few months ago was made in Vietnam, at least according to its sticker. I also want to point out, too, that this de minimis removal was not something new here. The Biden administration was also looking at it due to the growth of Temu. And their concern, at least from the Biden administration side, was that these imports were a workaround for some of the tariffs that the Biden administration left in place after the first Trump administration left office. So nothing new here. It's something that I think the U.S. government was going to do, but the Trump administration certainly accelerated it and implemented this change much more aggressively, I think, than the Biden administration would have done. So who is going to collect these tariffs? Well, it really depends on a number of factors and what the e-commerce site is willing to do. So for example, I looked up some random item on Temu that would ship to me from China, and here what they are doing is collecting the import charges up front. It looks like at the moment on AliExpress, they're informing you of what your import duty obligations might be, but they're not collecting those fees right now. So it's likely that you will hear from your carrier or the post office to say, we can't release the product until you pay the duty or tariff on this before it gets released. And I think it's going to create a lot of confusion in the marketplace here. What happens if you don't pay the tariff? Well, what's likely going to happen is that these small boxes are going to start building up everywhere, either at your local post office or at the port of entry. You might see these things get auctioned off as pallets in government auctions, because if people decide that they don't want to pay the tariff, they're going to probably be out their purchase price, but the product will sit where it landed. They, of course, could get sent back to China, but that would be very expensive as well. So this is going to create a major logistical problem for all of the carriers and Customs, because they're going to have stuff that is just going to sit when people don't want to pay a $200 duty on something they paid $50 for. Now, many of these online retailers are not sending you products directly from China. They're bringing them into the United States first and then shipping them out from a local warehouse. So in that case, you won't get hit with import charges from the post office or DHL, but you will be paying for them in one way, shape, or form. Now, for example, this item on Temu is being advertised as having no import charges because it's stored in their local warehouse. And it's likely right now that this product was brought in before these tariffs took effect. But in the near future, you might not see tariff delineated on your checkout page, but you will see an increase in the cost of that product. And we're starting to see this now across the industry. So for example, Asus is now raising prices on some of their laptops. We looked at a really low-cost one that was a pretty good deal a few weeks ago, but now we're seeing increases from anywhere from 7 to 9% on some of these laptops due to tariffs. Now, what's likely happening here is that Asus is probably eating some of that cost and then raising the price up a little bit. And depending on the manufacturer and how they want to handle it and their capacity to absorb these costs, we may or may not see significant price increases. But I think across the board, you will see prices going up. Anker, for example, is passing most of the tariff charges on to customers. Some products reportedly going up by 18% or more. And you really have to go in and research this because they're not putting this into the itemization of the product. It's just going to cost more as their landed costs go up. Framework, who makes those really cool upgradable laptops, has also announced that they are raising prices on their products. And in their case, it's a little more complicated because although the import of laptops from China is exempt from the 125%, they still are hit with those other baseline duties that took effect. And some of their stuff actually comes from Taiwan, but some of the modules that they import for their laptops that come from China are not exempt from the new tariff. So they've got a lot of complexity in how they price everything, and especially because they sell all of their parts as specific products as opposed to having them completed inside of a laptop, that adds more layers of complexity. So it's really hard, I think, for startups to operate in this environment. They have less ability to absorb these things. They don't have powerful influence in Washington that can get certain products exempted from these tariffs. And ultimately, they have to figure out a way to either absorb all these costs or raise their prices and become less competitive against these larger companies that are at an advantage in this environment. In a day or two, we'll be talking to my friend Nick Mueller from HD Retrovision, and they make these really nice cables for retro game consoles. They've carved out a nice niche for themselves in that industry. But if the tariffs stay in place, as you'll hear from Nick in a day or two, it's going to be very difficult for them to remain in business, at least in supplying cables to the U.S. market. So these tariffs, you may not be feeling it right now, but you will certainly feel it in the very near future. If you are somebody that buys from AliExpress or Temu or whatever, in the next week, those prices are going to go up through the roof, and you might be shocked by how much you're going to be paying for those imports. But across the board, you will start seeing these prices take effect as existing stocks wind down and new stock comes in with these tariff charges applied to the base cost. So buckle up. Things are going to get more expensive unless things change over the next couple of weeks. That will do it for this one. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.